Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and I feel like it's a good time to finally update y'all on all of the Commanders' coaching staff changes. Ever since Eric Bieniemy's gotten here, a lot of changes have been made. Some new hires, some promotions. Of course, some guys left to create these openings and things like that. So I want to dive into all of the changes, especially all of the guys that we brought in and promoted. Take a look at some of their backgrounds and their history to see if we should be really excited about this coaching group or not. Is this potentially the best coaching staff that the Commanders, Washington football team, or Redskins have had in years, especially being led by Eric Bieniemy? I mean, that holds its own weight. And say whatever you want about Jack Del Rio off the field, but on the field, he had those guys balling out last season. And I feel like that Cowboys game was the biggest proof of that. I mean, half the starters gone and they shut down the Cowboys better than some of the defenses in the playoffs could. I mean, we had Percy Butler, Khalid Hudson, and guys like that out there basically starting. No St. Juice, no Cameron Curl. I don't even think Jonathan Allen played in that game. Of course, no Cole Holcomb. But we're talking about everybody outside of that right now. For this video, I may do a video breaking down our entire coaching staff and why it could potentially be the best, but I want to focus on all of the new guys that we brought in, or again, the guys that have been promoted and what their new role is for the team and things like that. And also one guy in particular that we missed out on that we were heavily interested in. We'll talk about him briefly and where he ended up going. But we got the ultimate prize. We got Eric Bieniemy, so anything below that would have just been extra. But yeah, man, before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure you pull up every Sunday for the call-in live show where I open up the phone lines and y'all call in. We talk about whatever you want to talk about, ask whatever questions you may have, propose a debate topic for other callers to discuss or other people in the comment section to discuss, all of that type of stuff, man. Make sure you stay tuned for film sessions on draft players coming up for my channel members only. Make sure you stay tuned for mock drafts, everything free agency, and anything Commanders. I got y'all, even if it's just simple little video clips from around the internet. And without further ado, let's get it. All right, so all the way back in February 28th, we hired a new QB's coach, Tavita Pritchard, and then the old QB's coach, Ken Zampese, became our senior offensive advisor game management, and thank goodness. I'm gonna dive into why that's such a big deal, because we didn't even have that as a coaching title, as a position last season, and it definitely looked like we needed it. Also, we promoted Brent Visselmeyer to DB's coach with Chris Harris leaving for the Titans, I believe. Richard Rodgers became the senior defensive assistant and safeties group. And then Christian Garcia became the assistant DB nickel coach. And then later on, March 9th, more recently, the Commanders officially announced the hiring of Bobby Engram as our new wide receivers coach, as our previous one went to the Cardinals for some role. At first, it was supposed to be offensive coordinator, then it ended up being something else. Also, Shane Toub, I believe it's pronounced T-O-U-B, was hired as offensive quality control coach, and then Reggie Howard was hired as defensive quality control coach. So those are all of the changes that have gone down with our coaching staff since Eric Bieniemy's been hired. And just to give you like the official titles, Tavita Pritchard, quarterbacks coach; Ken Zampese, senior offensive advisor game management; Brent Visselmeyer, defensive backs coach. He's the defensive backs coach, what Chris Harris was. He got the promotion and is literally that. Richard Rodgers is the senior defensive assistant and safeties, and Christian Garcia is assistant defensive backs nickels coach. Those are their official titles. And of course, Bobby Engram is officially our wide receivers coach as well. Now starting with Tavita Pritchard, who again is our QB's coach, enters the NFL's coaching ranks for the first time after a lengthy stint at Stanford in numerous roles, including defensive coordinator from 2018 to 2022. He played QB there as well until Andrew Luck beat him out. Really interesting story there. And he's clearly being brought here to help Sam Howell. He's the next quarterback, also recently an offensive coordinator for 4 years, and he's being brought here to specifically develop Sam Howell and whoever else may enter the building as a quarterback. I'm pretty sure we're going to bring in a veteran, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to help those guys out as well. But the main focus is developing Sam Howell throughout this offseason, hopefully, so he can go out there and be a good enough quarterback to win us games this upcoming season. But also, I think it is noteworthy, one slight negative is that Pritchard was last month demoted to QB's coach, with the new coach taking over at Stanford for David Shaw. The new head coach, Troy Taylor, is going to end up handling defensive coordinator duty. So Pritchard ended up getting demoted to QB's coach for Stanford before he decided, you know what, I might as well go be a QB's coach in the NFL instead. And that's how we ended up getting him. But I think he'll end up doing a really good job. It's not a lot to speak on as far as he goes, like resume wise and things like that. But I'm really excited about the hire, and I think he'll do a pretty good job with Sam Howell. But I think most importantly, I think Eric Bieniemy is going to do a great job of designing an offense that brings out Sam Howell's strengths and masks his weaknesses, especially with all of the weapons that we have and things like that. We just got to fix his offensive line. So Tavita Pritchard, I'm expecting him to do at the very least a pretty decent job, but it ultimately falls on Eric Bieniemy to get the most out of him. So I'm excited either way. Also, Ken Zampese, again, who served as our quarterbacks coach from 2020 to 2022, will move to the role of senior offensive advisor and game management. And like I talked about earlier briefly, that's huge for us because we didn't have that as a position coach last season, and we clearly needed it. We didn't have anybody on game management specifically last year, and it showed over and over again. We struggled with game management things. And so now that, again, Tavita Pritchard is coming in as QB's coach, Ken Zampese gets promoted and is literally specifically in charge of game management. And then at the same time, again, not to toot Eric Bieniemy's horn too much, but Andy Reid and a lot of Chiefs reporters give Eric Bieniemy credit for fixing Andy Reid's game management and clock management issues. Remember, before Pat Mahomes and Eric Bieniemy, Andy Reid had this big stigma of he's a great coach, but his clock management is atrocious. And then here come Eric Bieniemy, and everybody, again, Chiefs supporters, even Andy Reid said it himself, gives Eric Bieniemy credit for Andy Reid's improved game management, clock management, and all of that type of stuff. So not only have we promoted Ken Zampese to literally only focus on that, that's your only job, so you better do a good job at it, but Eric Bieniemy is already naturally good at that as an defensive coordinator, and we've seen definitive proof about it. So I'm really excited about that being fixed because, man, Rivera, love him for a lot of reasons, but he falls short in a lot of ways as well, and clock management last year was atrocious. That was one of the main ones. So bringing in Eric Bieniemy and promoting Ken Zampese to handle that specifically is very interesting. You could tell that they self-evaluated, and even Ron Rivera was probably like, yeah, I probably need some help with this. So thank you, Ron Rivera, for not being so prideful that you want to keep doing it and like prove to everybody that you can't do it. No, if you can't do it, hire somebody that can. And I'm glad that Rivera, at the very least, one thing you can't say about Ron Rivera is that he's too prideful to admit when he's wrong in certain situations and too prideful to hire somebody to do it. Because at first he tried to do this whole GMing thing by himself, didn't work out, ended up bringing in 3 GMs technically for different roles: Chris Polian, Marty Herney, and Martin Mayhew. Clock management was atrocious last year, so he brought in an offensive coordinator that already has a proven track record of being good at it, and then also promoted his ex-QB's coach to do that specifically, and that's it. Every day that Ken Zampese reports to the team, he shows up for meetings, watches film, all of that. His focus is on game management primarily, first and foremost. But also some slightly negative news. The Commanders are very interested in Greg Lewis as their wide receivers coach, but he ended up choosing the Ravens instead of joining Eric Bieniemy in Washington. And him and Eric Bieniemy have a lot of history together, especially coaching for the Chiefs together. It was reported by Tom Pelissero all the way back February 22nd that the Commanders have expressed a high level of interest in hiring Greg Lewis to a top spot on new assistant head coach, offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy's staff. So not only was he going to become like our wide receivers coach, but he was probably going to hold some additional title that let people know, like, this guy is right under me. He's not just simply a wide receivers coach. So they thought of him that highly. But Greg Lewis, former NFL wide receiver, and has coached multiple position groups at Kansas City, which is why I would have loved to have brought him in, and that's why he's highly regarded around the NFL. The Ravens got a good one in him, so we missed out on him, but I'm personally also excited about Bobby Engram, because this is kind of weird how things kind of cross paths, because we wanted Greg Lewis, he ended up going to the Ravens. The Ravens wanted Bobby Engram, he ended up coming to us, so it kind of evens out. Greg Lewis has a slightly more well-regarded resume, but Bobby Engram isn't far behind him at all, and with him being our new wide receivers coach, remember, he's a long-time NFL receiver. He coached wide receiver, and we need some tight end help. He coached tight end also for the Ravens from 2014 to 2021. So he's given a lot of the credit for how Mark Andrews developed. Because coming out of the draft, people didn't expect Mark Andrews to be that good. Good, but not this good. And this is more of like a recent thing, since the Baltimore Ravens receivers just haven't been very good. Again, he left after 2021. He was Wisconsin's offensive coordinator last season. So that's interesting, going from wide receiver and tight ends coach in the NFL to offensive coordinator for a college, especially a college that good as Wisconsin. And again, he was their offensive coordinator. And first of all, one really notable part about him being the offensive coordinator for Wisconsin is that we're going to get a leg up on information on center Joe Tippmann, who y'all already know that's my guy. I've been mocking him to us since the middle of the regular season in 2022, all the way back in fall. Like, Joe Tippmann is my guy. Sadly, every mock draft I've done with him, every like month or so, he just ends up going higher and higher up big boards, and now he's no longer a sleeper, and some people may even feel like he gets drafted in the second round, third round at the latest. But when the first time I mock drafted him to us, I had us potentially getting him like fifth round or something like that. But again, that was during the fall regular season, the 2022 season, before he was able to put up his final season worth of tape. So I'm not surprised that he rose up draft boards, because he had a really good final season at Wisconsin. He was their starting center. He has so much potential, unlimited potential. He's just one of those athletic guys with a lot of strength that once you work with him work on some technique issues, take him from this raw prospect to a more crisp, technically sound prospect, he literally has Pro Bowl center potential written all over him. And again, our new wide receivers coach was his offensive coordinator just this past season. So we have the leg up on talking to Joe Tippmann and getting information on him without even having to bring him in for a visit. Remember, we have a limited amount of visits that we can bring in as prospects for this 2023 NFL draft. And if you want to use your visits for other people and then maybe not use one of Joe Tippmann, because you have Bobby Engram that can literally vouch for him, that's been with him for the past season. So that's pretty cool. That's an additional benefit to bringing in Bobby Engram, because whoo, Lord knows, man, we do kind of need a center. Chase Roullier, love him, but that man can't play a full season to save his life right now. And I would do backflips if we ended up finding a way to get Joe Tippmann sometime third round or later. I mean, I feel like that's a home run, arguably best still at a draft type of material right there. And right before we hired Bobby Engram, we also interviewed Carl Dorrell for the wide receiver job as well. Also in 2020, Engram contributed to an offensive unit in Baltimore that scored the NFL's 7th most points, 29.3 points per game in the NFL, and led the league in rushing with 3,071. Now, he is a wide receiver tight ends coach, so it's not like he gets the majority of the credit for that, but he played a part. And again, I give a lot of the credit for Mark Andrews' development and how they use him in the Baltimore offense to basically be Lamar Jackson's favorite target. I give a lot of that credit to Bobby Engram. And just to give you a little background on Brent Visselmeyer, who's our DB's coach now, they got promoted to DB's coach. He was one of our assistant DB's coaches for a minute now. He enters his 8th season coaching in the NFL, and this is his 4th with Washington. This will be his first season of the role of defensive backs coach, of course. He was Washington's assistant defensive backs nickels coach from 2020 to 2022, after serving in a variety of coaching roles with the Oakland Raiders from 2015 to 2018. And Chris Harris did a great job with this group, but Brent Visselmeyer also gets a lot of the credit as well. Prior to joining Washington, Visselmeyer was the head coach for Santa Margarita Catholic High School. Prior to coaching at Santa Margarita, he was an offensive analyst for the University of Kansas in 2018. And then Richard Rodgers, who got promoted to senior defensive assistant in safeties, enters his 12th season coaching in the NFL and his 4th with Washington as well. It is his first season in this role, of course. He held a role of assistant defensive backs coach from 2020 to 2022. In 2020, Rodgers assisted the defensive backs group that boasted the second best passing defense in the league in 2020, 191.8 yards per game. Rodgers helped coach the group that allowed 3,068 net passing yards, Washington's fewest since 2004. Rodgers joined Washington after serving a variety of roles with the Carolina Panthers from 2012 to 2019. So he's one of the Washington Commanders that was brought over with Ron Rivera. Christian Garcia, who's our assistant DB's nickel coach, is entering his 3rd season coaching in the NFL and 3rd with the Commanders. All of them have been with the Commanders. This will be his 1st season in the role that he currently has now, of course, because he just got promoted. Garcia has held the role of defensive quality control coach the past 2 seasons, and now he's getting this shot as assistant DBs and nickels coach, basically taking the role of what Richard Rodgers has been doing the past couple of seasons. Previously, Garcia spent the 2020 season working with Georgia Tech staff as graduate assistant, having a quality control role. Garcia spent the 2019 season with UNLV as a defensive quality control coach there as well. And as a former collegiate linebacker, Garcia finished his college career at the University of Florida and was one of 4 team captains. He played linebacker and was a key member of Florida special teams, played in all 11 games of 2017 as a reserve linebacker, and was named the Orange Bowl FWAA Courage Award Player of the Week after he recorded 4 tackles and 1 tackle for loss at Kentucky. But yeah, man, that's a nice little brief history on everybody new that we brought in, because I know a lot of people haven't been able to keep track of all of the coaching hires we've made, because for any normal team, coaching hires would be front page, like, oh wow, we hired some new coaches, especially like QB's coach and wide receivers coach and things like that. These aren't just quality control coaches. We did those as well, but we have a new DB's coach. We have a new all of this type of stuff. But between Dan Snyder and all of that stuff, Ron Rivera, the draft, free agency, all of this stuff going on, that ended up taking the back burner for a lot of people in our fan base. And I feel like a lot of people do not know that we made all of these hires and promotions recently. So I felt like this video needed to be done. And it looks like our entire coaching staff is finished. This is finalized. So we are ready to move into the 2023 season with this exact coaching staff. We have it all ready before we hit free agency. It would be nice if the team were sold before free agency, but at the very least, hopefully it could be sold before the draft. So we'll have our entire coaching staff and a new owner leading into the draft. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. As always, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about a lot of these hires and promotions. Are you a big fan of our new wide receivers coach, our new DBs coach, Ken Zampese moving to a game management role? Do you feel like that's as important as I do, man? Because boy, Ron Rivera really struggled with that. The whole Commanders struggled with that last year, so I love that. So let me know how you feel about all of the changes and how Eric Bieniemy helps with a lot of those changes as well. And I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.